Hello and welcome to the Virtual Couch Cancer Blog number 14, I think it is. I'll have to double check that. Yes, it is 14, and today is the 12th of April. It's Wednesday, the 12th of April 2017. So it's essentially 2 months since I did my last blog. And yeah, so you can see I've got my little implant, which I had a few days after doing that video. Which they pumped the chemo in, and I've actually had I've gone through 3 rounds of chemo. So what they call rice salvage chemo, basically, after you've relapsed, is what they usually follow up with for lymphoma. And that's done. I finished that on Sunday, so about 2 days ago. I had a scan on Friday, and unfortunately the response on the PET scan isn't as favourable as we were hoping. So basically there's I suppose on the scan it's red, and we don't want to see the red, and there's still red there. So the intensity or the activity that they can see on the PET scan hasn't decreased at all, and in fact the area's kind of got a little bit bigger. But the other thing that's changed is the tumour itself has reduced again in size. So there's been some effect with the chemotherapy. So it's just that area of effect is still quite intense. And yeah, I had a meeting today with a radiologist, and they've been talking to the hematologists, and so basically they're pretty certain that it's still lymphoma, but there could be a possibility that the activity they're seeing on the PET scan is necrosis of the original tumour. But they wouldn't know that unless they biopsied, but then they might biopsy the wrong part and there still might be lymphoma cells there. So the risk is that if we don't do anything, then the cancer could come back and it might not be curable. So hence they were hoping to not subject me to radiotherapy, because a lot of cases in my type of cancer and the treatment that I went through last year, the dose adjusted REPOC, have a really good success rate, and I did respond very favourably to the treatment. It's just that I've had a reoccurrence or a relapse, which really it happens in, like I said, the 10% of cases, and I just fell below that threshold. So I'm just unlucky in that respect. So instead of pushing on with the stem cell transplant, which was the next part of the treatment which they had planned, what the thought is and what the recommendation is for treatment, which we talked about today, was to go forward with a course of radiotherapy, because lymphoma also responds well to radiotherapy. So it could be that we knock out whatever activity is there with the radiotherapy. Now this will be over 5 weeks and 25 doses, so every day going in, and it's really only just 15 minutes of treatment against where the tumour is. So this has risks associated with it. In the long term, it could cause heart issues. In the short to medium term, some irritation with the esophagus, and it could cause a nasty complication with the chemotherapy that I need to have prior to the stem cell transplant. So there's some risks, but you mitigate those against having the treatment. So I went ahead and agreed with having the treatment. So it'll take a couple of weeks to set up, and hopefully by late April we'll be able to start the radiotherapy, and that'll go for about 5 weeks. And then I'm assuming after that, what'll happen is I'll go in for the stem cell procedure, which is into hospital, where they blast me with a fairly high regimen of chemo, which effectively shuts down my bone marrow from producing stem cells, blood, and immune system cells, and then I'll get my stem cells back, which hopefully I'll donate in about a week's time, because currently I'm giving myself injections every day to boost my bone marrow production so they can collect the stem cells. So that's basically it in a bit. So I had a look at the scans from my first scan from last year, before I had any treatment, and to the scan now, and there's just no comparison in terms of the size of the tumour and the activity level. So I'm still fairly confident that we can beat this. It's just a couple of months of more of treatment, really, because I was thinking, we go into the stem cell procedure and then we may or may not need some radiotherapy, but now we definitely do need, have been recommended to have the radiotherapy, so probably looking at another 2 months before treatment is finished, so probably late June or so. So that's where we're at the moment. It's still a way to go, and still hopefully get back into remission. Like they say, my case is quite an unusual one. It's unusual to see someone who responds so well to the initial treatment to then relapse, and they still, the activity, that is still, they're pretty sure it's lymphoma, but they can't 100% say, well, it's definitely lymphoma, but they're erring on the side of caution to recommend the treatment. So that's where we're at. But as for me, well, I'm just trying to take it a day at a time, week at a time. I haven't suffered that much in terms of the side effects from the chemo that I've had. It's been two sessions of 3 days were in the day ward clinic, so it was going in, have it, come home. The last session, unfortunately, they had to schedule over a weekend, so I was back in the ward for 3 days, and it started late, so it finished late, so it was quite tiring. But that's done now, so now it's I get a couple of weeks rest until they start up with the radiotherapy. So that's my update. But so thanks for everyone who's been asking after me, and I've just been toddling along as best I can, and mostly just really tired. It's just one of those things where it's not so much the physical effects, like nausea or anything like that. It hasn't been anywhere as bad as last year. It's just been sort of more mental and emotional, and just physically draining, physically tiring, so just trying to keep pushing on, and really just see this as a setback that's pushed me back another 6 months until I can start getting life restarted and back on the track. And I'll post up on Facebook and Instagram, for those of you who follow me on there. Some interesting photos that I took of scans which were up on the computer today. Just to give you an idea, the tumour was something like 11 centimetres in size, 11 by 13 centimetres on my chest, so quite large. And now it's barely, I think, 1.4 centimetres or something like that. So, so very small. Anyway, that's about it for my update. And yeah, sorry I rambled a bit, but yeah, that's it. So we'll just see how we go in the next few weeks, and I'll try and do an update before then, rather than sort of leave it a couple of months. But yeah, anyway, talk soon.